Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unmatched Advanced Fundamentals. This time we will be talking about win conditions and play patterns. I am re-recording this because my last recording got corrupt and deleted itself. Anyways, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. This quote is attributed to Sun Tzu, and it is found in his book The Art of War. Knowledge is what leads to victory, but not only knowledge in general, but specifically knowledge of yourself and of your opponent. In Unmatched, this applies to matchup knowledge. And a broader way to look at matchup knowledge is through the lens of play patterns specific to the two fighters inside of the matchup. To talk about play patterns, we must first talk about winning the game. To win a game of Unmatched, you must reduce the opponent's hero's health to zero, which is self-evident. But there are multiple ways to do it. These ways are a broader form of play patterns or archetypes fighters might fall into. Fighters might shift their play patterns based on the opposing fighter. So we have winning through pressure, which means having a large volume of attacks and a lot of interaction with the opponent, hoping to get one or two damage in here or there, maybe land an undefended hit, and then win through accumulation of damage. We have damage in the form of combos, which means playing a combo fighter, having your one turn kill or having your one or two or three big combos, and then just hitting your opponent over their defenses and killing them throughout the combos, or even dealing undefendable, unblockable effect damage through the combos. And then there's value. Value is a slower play style where you want to go through as much of your deck as possible because your deck has a higher quality than your opponent's, and then you kill them through a mix of effects, card advantage, and possibly exhaustion, or at least the threat of exhaustion, forcing them into suboptimal gameplay. There's a pure exhaustion kind of game plan where you use your schemes as passes, you use attacks as passes, and you might have some kind of recursion to thicken up your deck, and then you just win against your opponent by decking them out faster than you deck yourself out. And ideally having enough of a health to lead to where if you do deck yourself out at some point, you still win because you padded yourself for a couple of additional maneuvers in exhaustion. And then talking about these four important play patterns, there is also winning through running your opponent out of resources, which can be by full sending or playing aggro. So let's make a differentiation between aggro and tempo. Tempo fighters can sometimes hit the brakes, while playing aggro or playing an aggro fighter means you go full send all game long. And the goal here is generally to land undefended hits. And then there's also running your opponent out of cards defensively, which means outlasting or surviving fighters. And the biggest culprit of getting outlasted is T-Rex, where you generally can't really. Most fighters can't face T-Rex in a direct confrontation, but all fighters can exhaust T-Rex. Now that we've talked about winning the game, let's talk about how to actually win the game. So, to win the game actually consistently, you need to, of course, understand yourself and understand the enemy or the opponent. This means understanding who the aggressor in the matchup is. For example, if Alice fights Sinbad, Sinbad is a tempo fighter who generally likes to be aggressive, but Alice is strongest at the start of the game because she still has all of her damage tools. She chooses to be big, at least in this matchup. She has Jabberwock alive, so her power will only go down as the game goes on, while Sinbad's voyages will ramp up and his power will increase. That means that Alice is the aggressor in this matchup. Now, Alice, compared to Achilles, she has trouble killing him because of Achilles' helm. However, she doesn't have any difficulty exhausting him if Patroclus is dead, meaning that Alice will generally become the defensive part in this matchup, and she will abuse being small Alice to win it. And this can fluctuate, right? If you're playing the more aggressive fighter, but your opponent does a few too many maneuvers, you can suddenly just back off and abuse your deck lead. And this is applicable to many fighters and many matchups. You have to understand who the aggressor is, but also understand how it can shift. For example, Tomoe pressuring Tesla and then Tesla popping his blue defense, drawing free, healing one, and then comboing her to death. Play towards your win conditions. You have to understand your play pattern and how to use it to actually win. You have to deny your opponent's win conditions. You have to understand how they will try to win this game. And you have to think about what you can do to prevent that from happening, how to slow down the approach of their win condition, and how to pause it. You have to play around key interactions when this is possible. So if you're playing someone like Sinbad, you want generally you want to keep your feints for late game, so you can try and hit a voyage, ideally voyage home with it. If you're playing against Dracula, for example, then you want to know they're gonna beast form you, and you want to know that they will try and abuse do my bidding before beast forming you. So think about how you can play around those cards and how you can survive them. Do not lose games you're winning. Don't throw them. For example, you're playing Dracula. Your opponent has their defensive cancel is just a regular feint, and they are at 4 HP. Walk away. It doesn't matter if you're losing exhaustion. Walk away until you have your beast form and enough cards to guarantee lethal through any of their defenses, and then just teleport in or boost in and beast form and kill them. Don't give them a chance to win just because you're bored. In a competitive setting, this would be considered throwing. Try to win losing games, or gamble, baby. So how you do this is, if you're playing a very difficult matchup, or if you're just in a losing position, you will often take more risks, or you should take more risks, because what is there to lose if you're already losing the game? Put yourself in a position where you can get lucky. Gamble and hope for the best if you're already in a losing position. If you're in a winning position, you want to take as few risks as possible. Plan out key interactions. So this is slightly different from the earlier point. There are things you cannot prevent. Medusa will be discarding your cards. Moon Knight will be becoming Khonshu. So think about these things. Think about, like, if you're Yanenga and you're playing against Medusa, you want to be discarding your schemes because they're not combat cards and they're your lowest value cards. So if you're both losing out on resources, the last thing you want to do is gain actions. If you're playing against Khonshu or Moon Knight, think about when he'll be Khonshu. Late game, think about whether he avoids exhaustion damage by being Khonshu. And yeah, don't get surprised by things you can predict. Instead, plan for them. And always take the opportunity to win by doing nothing. In a casual setting, of course, you maybe want to be flashy, you want to be fun, you don't want to be that guy. But in a competitive setting, as long as everything is fair play, and as long as your sportsmanship is up to point, do whatever it takes to win. If you can walk your opponent to death, do it. If you find a nasty combo line, or if camping an item token wins you the game, do it. No one's feelings should get hurt because you played well. Play well, and if that means not approaching your opponent, not interacting, overdrawing and discarding too, then do those things. Winning is your goal in competitive play. So here's an interesting point. I think most players play Medusa poorly. And there's a few deceptive reasons why that is. First one is that she has simple cards, and then people tend to think about them less than about complex cards. And just because she's simple doesn't mean she's easy. Those are two different things. There's the trap where people think, oh, my Medusa or my Sherlock, or even worse, my Doctor Strange, they're powerful, they're strong, so I will win. Well, you can still misplay easy matchups. You can easily throw even matchups, and you can make favored matchups unfavored by accumulating a bunch of small misplays or blundering just once. So don't fall for the trap of thinking, oh yeah, I'm favored here, I have a good matchup, I'll win. You always have to play it out. Always. Medusa doesn't always have a clear game plan. She has 4 passes, but she has 6 draw effects. That might seem like it's conflicting, but you choose which cards you will play and which cards you won't. You can discard regroups to overdraw. You can boost your second shots with them. We'll talk about this more later. But just because you have cards doesn't mean you have to play them. There's also passing or pressuring, where you have these purple sidekick cards, which you have to choose when to play them. So it's not just whether you play cards, it's also when you play them. People keep forgetting pings, but also people keep forgetting about playing around having Medusa's pings. And by pings, I just mean the 1 damage she deals at the start of her turn. So focus on that. Stretch or min-max the advantages of your fighter. Leading to the next point, where Medusa's deck, I would say, is only decent. It's only slightly good. It's nothing to write home about. Her fighter card is insane. She is tanky, move 3 with 3 sidekicks and ranged, and has an incredible ability. So you tend to think about the cards in your hand more than the cards in your deck, and you tend to think about the cards in your deck more than your fighter card. But in reality, you need it all to come together, and you need to min-max the value you can receive from all of these sources, and only then will you increase your win rate to its maximum capacity. Only then will you optimize your gameplay. So always think about how to use your ability, how to use your sidekicks, how to use your movement, whether you're melee or ranged. All of these things can be used to increase your likelihood of winning. So how to play Medusa well? I promise I'll avoid fighter specifics, but I do want to go over Medusa first of all because we all know Medusa. She's in the first set of the game. And second of all, because she's simple but very difficult in a way, let's just see all the ways she can use her cards to create this maximum value padding and increase her odds of winning. So if you play her Momentary Glance as a scheme, it deals 2 damage, but it's also a pass, which can be 2 exhaustion damage as well, or prevents 2 exhaustion damage. That's 4 damage. If you boost second shot with it, that's 4 damage. So it sounds like the same thing. However, you can boost second shot with a regroup, which is 2 damage, and regroup would never deal 2 damage. It generally makes you take 2 damage. And you still have your glance for 4 damage. So if you're playing a slow game, never boost with it. So if you're playing a slow game, never boost with it. But also, in general, you don't really want to boost with it. Except if you're setting up lethal. There are like niche situations, but avoid doing that. Avoid wasting value. And then try to guarantee your value. It's the point on the right. If you have your sidekick cards and you want to play them out, you can position in a way where you can Winged Frenzy to guarantee an attack with a sidekick card before your sidekick dies to like affect damage. This way you can play around your opponent denying your resources, which is applicable in a lot of scenarios. And you want to deny your opponent resources. If you're playing Medusa against Yananga, it's very good to Momentary Glance the sidekicks so that Yananga cannot play sidekick cards on defense. Medusa can play to 4 different win conditions, or 4 different play patterns, I should say, and each one of them will make her use cards in a different way. So if she's playing for pressure, she might not even boost her second shot, or she might boost it with like a regroup or maybe a harpy card, right? You're just throwing a large volume of attacks. You want to attack with your draw cards, and then you want to land the Momentary Glance. The Gaze of Stone. If you're playing for exhaustion, you don't want to play your draw effects. If you're playing full-on exhaustion, you want to boost your regroups. You want to, maybe you'll scheme a harpy in exhaustion just to avoid approaching your opponent. You want to attack with as many harpy cards as possible because it's all passes. If you're playing for value, and you won't be landing undefended Gaze of Stones, you want to boost them for second shot to get the maximum value out of your second shots. You want to attack with your repositioning effects, so you avoid counter attacks, you ruin your opponent's positioning and stuff like that. And if you're just playing to survive, you will defend with the Harpy discards to reduce your opponent's hand count and to play them before all of your Harpies are dead. You will defend with your snipes, you will defend with your dashes, you will use almost all of your versatiles in defense, and you will maximize your odds of surviving and then outlasting your opponent. And these things aren't applicable just to Medusa, of course. Play against your opponent's play pattern and play towards your own win conditions, and that will open up more clear and more correct ways to play. As Sun Tzu says, opportunities multiply as they are seized. Every time you make a correct play, there's a higher likelihood that a new correct and good play opens up, which allows you to keep pushing your advantage and do as few risks as possible. So let's talk about what makes fighters good. I swear this isn't just dogging on Ali. I think Ali's kind of fun. I brought Shredder against Ali to my last roster tournament, IRL. I got absolutely obliterated as Ali. But Ali has a chance in this matchup. He needs a lot of things to go well, and he needs to play perfectly, but Ali can beat Shredder some of the time. There's often this argument that we cannot tell on release or before a fighter is released whether they're going to be good or bad. And there's truth to that, of course. We can't tell exactly how good a fighter is going to be. We can't tell all of their matchups. But the more experienced players can have really good estimates. Yennefer and Triss are one of the best fighters in the game. And the best players knew that beforehand. They might have over-exaggerated it, but they knew she was at the top. They knew Ciri was at the top. And they knew Shredder's gonna be good. They knew Raph was gonna be good. People weren't talking about this because it was people were trying to keep it on the down low. But a lot of the people I talked to about the set before it was released were all like, "Oh yeah, Raph is gonna be really good," especially if you can draft them with map advantage. So predicting fighters, this isn't an ego thing. This isn't about, oh, these people were right, these people were wrong, la la la. None of that matters for winning the game. What matters is seeing the patterns that make fighters good, and then using these patterns to win, using these patterns to deny them, these play patterns, denying these play patterns, right? And then using these patterns through a pattern recognition filter and applying them to the broader pool of fighters so that you can draft better and that you can win more. Drafting will be covered in the next video, but this sort of leads into it. So this is assuming you're not making a limited fighter pool that's designed just to counter Shredder or just to carry Ali. So with that in mind, Shredder will generally always be a meta threat, and Ali will generally never be a meta threat, because there's always going to be better picks than him. So what free patterns determine this? First one is X factor. X factor is something that's layered over your fighter's quality that just makes them win sometimes. So Shredder has high X factor. If his deck order is amazing, if he gets to early combo you, he beats anyone. All right? If he has perfect deck order, you are not beating Shredder. At least if your deck order isn't even more perfect. That's just one of the strengths he has. He will win certain games for free. Ali, on the other hand, has very low X factor. He has a lower starting power level, which means he already needs good interactions to even be decent. And then on top of that, sure, he might be able to one turn kill you in theory, but in reality, it's way too stoppable, and it's way, way too good deck order reliant to be considered a high X factor. Then Shredder has low counterplay. And what I mean by this is you have to, first of all, to pressure Shredder, which is generally his counterplay, you need to approach him, which he can punish. Then if you're chasing Shredder, Bebop gets to camp the nests. If you're chasing Bebop, Shredder gets to camp the nests. If you're playing way too passively, he can exhaust you. If you're playing way too aggressively, he gets to counter pressure you with huge hits. So whatever you're doing, Shredder has a chance of countering your counterplay to him. Whatever you're doing, there's a chance he can try and save himself. With Ali, on the other hand, if you throw bait attacks or cancels into his butterfly form, he can't force the healing because he needs to lose combat while in butterfly form. If he's B, you know he has to throw big hits. So if you have your stasis effects, which don't allow him to modify values and stuff like that, you know when you can deny his big damage. And his random discard requires him to win combat. So everything he does, you can counterplay, and he has very little counters to your counterplay. So that's why I say he has a high counterplay factor. And then Shredder has consistent win conditions. If it gets to exhaustion, he can pass 4 times with his 4 schemes. Along with filling the map with foot soldiers, which either means he's likely going to get to attack you from range for additional passes, or that you're going to be boosting away cards to remove the foot soldiers, and then he is getting card advantage, which leads into the next point of a powerful value game. So if you're a relatively slow fighter and you can't really kill Shredder, but maybe he can't kill you either, he is still going to be generally outvaluing the vast majority of fighters in that category. And then the last part about the consistency of his win conditions. Well, his combo requires a decent number of attacks, and it requires at least one of the schemes. Once it starts, it doesn't stop. You cannot cancel him mid-combo, right? You might be able to survive the combo, which isn't easy, but it's not like Bruce Lee where you can throw a feint and then end his turn. Once Shredder's combo is going, he becomes inevitable. Ali, on the other hand, not only has less consistent win conditions, he also has anti-synergy between his win conditions. So generally, he wins by exhausting you and out-surviving you, which is not helped by the fact that his random discard scheme draws him 2 cards, and that he has an attack which shuffles a card from the opponent's hand into the deck, making you a step further from winning exhaustion. He has the OTK combo, but he has a very divided deck with reds, blues, and yellows, meaning that finding the damage to kill you, even with the additional actions, isn't always going to be the case. And he's going to sometimes, since he also has a lot of reds, he's going to have to use his versatiles on defense, meaning that he's going to lose out on damage before he begins his combo. And then if he does try to combo you, you can generally cancel it because it's often predictable. And then let's say he just plays for pressure or tempo. His discard a random card from the opponent's hand, draw 2, and heal scheme requires him to win combat before you play it, which means that the opponent already had a chance to play their best defense before you get to play your random discard. So all of his win conditions, well, they do exist, and Ali does have multiple win conditions. They tend to play against one another, and then they tend to not be very consistent in a vacuum, which is, if you're gonna, like, I'm not gonna talk about tier lists here, but if you are gonna place Ali, it will bring him down just because you can't truly, like, best case scenario Ali isn't very realistic, while best case scenario Shredder might also seem unrealistic, but you don't need the best case scenarios to win on Shredder. You just need decent case scenarios. So that's some of the differences I want to point out, and hopefully these differences are something you can spot and again apply advanced pattern recognition to apply them to already existing fighters, to newly released fighters, and to your own drafts to give yourself a better chance of winning. And now, on the topic of consistency, how do you exploit it? So on the right, you can see 4 images. You can see Yenenga, the queen of consistency, and 3 lame-ass tempo fighters. Jokes aside, all of the 3 fighters, being Black Panther, Luke Cage, and Raptors, have a very decent game into Yenenga. They're all around evenish, I'll say. Maybe slightly favored for, or actually it is slightly favored for Panther, and then maybe slightly unfavored for the other 2, but it's all like in the even-ish range. I'll go through the points and then I'll talk about the fighters and how it relates to them. So consistency is not only unique card count. People often talk about like this fighter has 12, 13, 14, 15, 11 unique cards, so they're very consistent or inconsistent. That's part of it, but that's not the whole picture. You have to think about how many cards accomplish the same goal. So let's say Yenenga plays a decently normal game, and she has these Momentuses, these Skirmishes, these Jaws of the Beast, all of these versatiles that she can just use to attack if she likes it. Like she's playing a relatively slow value game, she's gonna attack a lot, defend a bit. She can use all of her versatiles as attacks. And this makes her incredibly consistent, even though some of these are only 2-ofs in her deck. Compared to Luke Cage, who has what I refer to at point 3 as a police deck, because he has a lot of red and blue cards. So sometimes you're going to be out of defenses when you really want to defend. And sometimes you're going to be out of attacks when you really want to attack. And in Unmatched, sometimes it's more important, or it's actually often more important to attack when you're supposed to attack than what you're going to attack with. Same thing applies to Raptors. Raptors are, they have a very red, blue, yellow deck. And with their limited number of blocks, they generally tend to need to play their versatiles as defenses. So this is something that can really easily lead to them losing to themselves, while Yenenga doesn't have that issue generally. And then there's specific card or sidekick reliance. I've won many games as Yenenga without ever playing a single archer card, while Black Panther is made or broken by whether or not you get Shuri schemes off. If Luke Cage loses his Misty, his sidekick, he loses almost all of his map control, because then he's a move 2 melee fighter who only gets 2 teleports throughout the game. The Raptors, as each Raptor dies, they start to lose out on potential damage and their ability to pin. So they're all reliant on more factors than just the cards they draw, while Yenenga really isn't. Like, sure, you can body block with the sidekicks, but as long as your opponent is killing the sidekicks, if you're not allowing them to kill them for free, they're wasting resources, they're wasting pressure, which means that the sidekicks are doing their job, even if you're not playing the sidekick cards. So how do we exploit knowledge of consistency to win the game? One example is, if you're playing a bad matchup, make them have it. What this means is, if you, let's say you're playing an evenish matchup and then there's 3 or 4 key cards or interactions you want to play around or play thinking about. In a bad matchup, there might be 10 or 20 of those. And you can't think about all of them. So you're often going to be in 50-50s, and maybe your opponent has specific defenses that ruin your game plan. Just make them have it. Like, play into it. If they have it, you were already losing. And if they don't, you punish them. Of course, don't just throw your cards away. Think about it. Maximize your chances to win. But also sometimes just make them have it. Don't lose to cards they don't have. My next point is, I believe value fighters are king. The ones of you that know me, you know I prefer a value-based playstyle to aggression. And one of the reasons why is, if we're playing a slower game, I expect to see at least 25 out of my 30 cards, which means the game's going to be more consistent, which means that if I believe I'm playing better than my opponent, I have less variance in what cards I see that can punish me, and I get to use I get to push my advantage of knowing the matchup or knowing our fighters or having really good positioning. So while there is a lot of skill to playing tempo and pressure, Emma is the best example of this. He's a really good player who maximizes his win rate by playing offensively. You can generally get more consistent gameplay out of playing more towards value fighters. And if you're relatively new to competitive unmatched, I would advise you to play a lot of value against value. So stuff like Medusa Yanenga, Medusa, Doctor Strange, Strange Yanenga, or even with the lower tier fighters, try to play towards these lower fighters just so you have more opportunities to learn from every game and then go back to plays you made and think about what you could have done differently. It is going to help you in the long run. And then something I've been talking about all slide long is reliability increases power in a vacuum. Shredder's game plan is more reliable than Ali's game plan, and Yanenga's strengths are more reliable than the strengths of the free fighters pictured underneath her. So oftentimes I'd rather play a 40-60 matchup as Yanenga than a 50-50 as Raptors or Luke Cage or Black Panther, just because I have more agency in the game. My decisions will matter more, and there's going to be less variance that can punish me, and there's a lower chance of me losing to myself or my own fighter when I'm playing Yanenga, which means that generally she will be, that's going to be like a point for Yanenga every draft and a point against these other free fighters every draft. That doesn't mean Luke Cage can't be a better fighter in the meta than Yanenga. That doesn't mean there won't be opportunities where drafting Raptors is way better than drafting Yanenga. It just means that in general, Yanenga will be a better fighter in a vacuum. And now, you might expect another slide, much like this one, just because that's what's going on for the last half an hour. However, you have been deceived. All warfare is based on deception. This is another quote by Sun Tzu, and it is incredibly important for Unmatched. And you can use this. Consider this. Deception doesn't mean bad sportsmanship, it doesn't mean lying to your opponent, and it doesn't mean cheating in this context. Deception is mind games, and it's incredibly important for Unmatched, and it's a huge part of the game. Break standard play patterns to win. We've been talking about play patterns, and we can consider those standard play patterns for this whole video. And now we're talking about stepping away from those, breaking those in niche scenarios to create a different sort of advantage. So using bait attacks is a form of this. Throwing your regroups, hoping to either land into a big defense, or even better, throwing your regroups into Strange, hoping to hit Mists of Manipur, and maybe having it draw a very powerful attack, right? I lost a game to Bigfoot where we were close to exhaustion, and then he maneuver boosted, and I value blocked it, and he throw regroup, and I lost my best defense to a very incredible bait. Which, if I took that regroup, right, I'm winning in the spot. But I was like, no way he'd be like, I even thought about the regroup, and I was like, no way he'd boost to reach me to regroup. And he did, and he won the game. So bait attacking is very powerful, but it also comes at a huge opportunity cost, because you could have thrown a good attack. And throwing a good attack is better than throwing a bad attack in a vacuum. But there are certain circumstances in which you can abuse bait attacks. Full send bad matchups. So if you're playing against a matchup that has a game plan that surely beats you. So Daredevil, even though it's an evenish matchup into Yanenga, Daredevil can surely go infinite against Yanenga. And so can Winter Soldier, and he can heal against her freeze. So you full send those. You play them exceptionally aggressively. You maximize your damage, and you hope for the best, right? That's how you play these matchups. That's how you often play bad matchups. And then If Winter Soldier is attacking you, he might throw a 6 at you, but he's still likely not killing you through damage, or at least not quickly. And Momentous Shift could stop 3 of the damage, but you could also throw it as a 5 at him later on. Just take the 6, throw a 5 at him, and be closer to killing him. Of course, that doesn't mean take every hit. It just means to consider doing stuff that would generally be insane if you're playing a bad matchup, because there's nothing to lose. You're already losing, right? So you have to look for opportunities to win it. And you might expect another unmatched tip, but even more deception comes your way, because this is another Sun Tzu quote. Appear weak when you're strong, and strong when you are weak. There is this thing with positioning that I like to call posturing. So you can posture neutral, where you're like taking map center or whatever, and that can mean a lot of things. You can posture defensively when you're running away from your opponent, or you can posture offensively when you're trying to stick to your opponent, be in their zone, whatever. And generally, you can't posture offensively if you don't have defenses, or you don't have a comfortable amount of defenses. And you wouldn't posture defensively if your hand is incredible, would you? Well, maybe you would, because posturing in the wrong way can be the right play, because it could bait your opponent to come to you or to run away from you when you don't really have the cards to back up that posturing. So this is something that I guarantee you all of the top players are at least thinking about, at least sometimes. And it can backfire. Like, all of these can backfire. So don't just throw your cards away and then throw your game away. Instead, think about your play patterns and think about what your opponent thinks about your play patterns. I understand this is exceptionally advanced. This might be difficult for a lot of people, but everything is difficult at first. This is a quote from Musashi Miyamoto. Think about these things slowly at the start. Don't overdo it. Like, think about them and then don't do it at all. Like, think about them and then don't do them. This is my suggestion if you're newer to competitive play. Think about opportunities for these unstandard play patterns and then don't do them. And then you're gonna see when they would have been punished and when they wouldn't have been punished. And this will create neural networks in your brain that will allow you to recognize when these patterns should or shouldn't be applied in the future. And slowly but surely, you will create a less predictable way of playing. And when we're on the topic of predictability, the last thing I'll cover today is if you're playing the same opponent many times, they will start to learn how you play. So throw some mix-ups. Do something that you generally wouldn't to catch them off guard and make them mind game themselves doing this. This is part of mind gaming as well as just poker facing while playing in real life. But also think about when playing online, whether your mouse movements are very erratic. For example, if you're doing like this, then maybe your opponent knows you don't have defenses, or that it's a very high agency, high variance interaction for you, where you're either baiting or throwing something huge. So you can give up a lot of information non-verbally and avoid doing that, because it will help your opponent beat you. Instead, try to be stoic while playing. This will be it for this guide. Next time I will hopefully cover matchups and then maybe another smaller topic. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for all of the positive feedback I've been getting. I appreciate any criticisms as well. And I just hope you guys continue like telling me what you want more of, what you want less of, and just letting me know how I can keep improving. I did get a new microphone, so I hope it's gonna sound a bit better this time around. And yeah, just keep interacting and I'll keep posting. And see ya.